craft crashes directly on top of them. Somehow, everyone on board the helicopter survived.
Watching darkest moments in TV history, my nigga. What be happening on TV that be that dark though? How does that happen? But like someone's on live and they're getting kidnapped. Not even trying to make a joke. I'm just saying, like live on TV. But don't they have like a whole studio though? Cause I feel like this all about to be outdated. Let's watch this bit
It was a typical day in the world of daytime television. Infomercials, soap operas, and highly...
You know what commercial used to scare me? The commercial when... Well, it's not really a commercial. It's just the transition from going to Cartoon Network to Adult Swim. But how quiet it was and how eerie it was, that little second, or not second, how long that bit was, that minute of silence and just the screen moving, saying Adult Swim. That shit used to scare me as a kid, bro. Like, generally, that used to scare me as a kid. I used to, oh my gosh, that little short time of silence, my nigga, I was scared for my life. I gotta keep it a buck, bro. I was dead scared for my life.
Scripted legal shows filled viewer screens,
Just Judy.
with one of the more popular at the time being a program called
judging?
Christina's Court.
Today in Christina's Court.
The show centered around a woman named Christina Perez, giving counsel and advice to those wrapped up in legal drama. And on this particular morning, comedian Seannn Harris would be featured filing suit against his ex-girlfriend in the hopes of recouping unpaid rent.
Every month it would be something different, you know?
Like what?
I ain't got it this month because I got to do this or that. I'm like, man.
So you let her go 9 months without paying rent?
Now, like I said, these shows were very obviously scripted, at least to some degree. And with Seannn himself being a professional comedian, it led to countless funny moments and what turned out to be one of the show's more iconic episodes, with by far the most memorable moment coming at the very end, when things seemed to deviate from the script.
Constantly like a child in my
People
own
in
house.
love, they yell at each other all the time.
Oh, that's true. Ask him, he's been married for how long?
Over 27.
Over 20.
Look at him though, he look mad. You don't look happy, brother. You don't look happy.
What the hell is this? Alright. I think marriage
we see the
actually is not
comedian
that
take
good, bro.
aim at Christina's
I feel like you
bailiff,
have to get
a man
married,
named
bro.
Renard Spivey,
Or stay
who was an
single. I
integral
don't feel
part
like
of the show, being the judge's sidekick.
Alright, this is what I'm gonna say. If you plan on not getting married, you plan on being single your whole life, just don't be a Shannon Sharp type of nigga. Even when you get to a certain age, just stop. If you're not settling down for everyone, don't start sleeping at everybody, bro, and cracking everybody. Don't be a Shannon Sharp ass nigga when you grow up. I'm trying to help you, nigga, because you probably gonna be one of them. You might have a wife and divorce her, then start sleeping with all types of niggas and paying for her. You feel me? That's gonna be you. Don't do that shit, bro. I'm telling you.
For years and years. Though it
Lame
wasn't
ass
often
nigga. I
that
already
he
know
found
that's finna
himself
be
at the
some
end
y'all,
of a
bro.
joke like this, as Seannn suggests that Renard looked unhappy when it was revealed that he had been married for over 27 years.
He's very happy. Okay, all right, let's get back to the claim.
All in all, it made for a rather charming moment, with viewers adoring the lighthearted jab aimed at one of the show's most beloved characters. Though no one could have known at the time just how true that joke about his happy marriage would turn out to be.
Still developing tonight, a Harris County Sheriff's deputy facing serious charges. 63-year-old Renard Spivey accused of killing his wife. 52-year-old Patricia.
What the hell? Bro, you never know someone's like true intentions, bro. They could look the happiest person. Like, you see someone like me, you can say I'm sweet as hell. I look fun. I look all that. You feel me? But you never know a nigga's true, like, feel me? That nigga looks so happy on the show. This nigga murdered his wife. Nigga, I could be a murderer, and you would never know until you get killed by me.
Spivey after an argument that turned deadly. KPRC Channel 2's Bill Baraka.
Damn, RP his wife.
On July 28th, 2019, over a decade after the aforementioned program aired, Renard Spivey was confronted by his wife Patricia about what she believed to be steroid use or perhaps even infidelity. And in the midst of this heated argument, Spivey would draw his gun
when he used steroids
and shoot his
PP
wife
gets
once
small?
in the arm and then in the chest. Shortly after, police would find her lifeless body crumpled in their bedroom closet.
RP, bro. She looked like a fun person.
Now,
nice
after
person.
years and years of taking part in this once famed legal show, Spivey can be found alone in his prison cell, where he'll likely remain for the next 14 years of his life, for murdering the woman that he was so happily married to, turning what was once one of Christina's Court's most iconic moments into one of the darkest examples of irony in all of television history.
When you find a good woman, you got to hang on.
Yeah, if y'all don't know, steroids like mess up your brain, bro? Like, can't it, like, it don't hit the same on everybody. Someone might just get they gains, obviously lose some of their PP meat, obviously, probably grow some small titties, but like, what I'm saying though, can steroids like make you like angry? Like, can't that shit like make you rage easily?
Hard to find another one. So my advice as a happy woman, married woman.
The darkest moments in history. Damn.
Before we get any further, I want to thank Scentbird for sponsoring this video and in turn making this dark content financially viable.
Sorry, bro. Shout out to Scentbird though.
The world of television is an interesting
all I've
one,
seen was-
despite
all
the
I read
highly
was
controlled and well-polished products that we're typically used to seeing on our screens. There have been a surprisingly high number of deeply disturbing moments that have happened when on air, and this potentially new series aims to highlight some of the most disturbing. And what better way to start than with a relatively unknown case that has haunted me for years.
Hold on, y'all. Let me post that on live real quick. I don't know what picture to use though. My bad on YouTube when y'all watching this. I'm not even gonna cut this out. Y'all can skip forward, bro. Y'all can skip forward, bro. Alright, hold on, let me put this in. Alright, we're good now.
Saturday, June 14, 2008, a Japanese TV station called Television Miyazaki is running its standard live programming, which on this day was set to feature a game show-like segment in the remote rice fields of Takachi Hocho. The game itself was simple. Competitors stood back-to-back on a small wooden stand above the shallow muddy water below, and when given the cue, they would attempt to shove their opponent into the water without turning their bodies around. In the end, the one left standing on the
Yo, my nigga, isn't this an anime? Yo, am I tripping? This is an anime. Well, not this, but they have an anime. I remember randomly finding it. I was scrolling on Crunchyroll. I was on no nut shit, bro. But it's practically an anime where obviously it's some big titty girls, big, like, you feel me? You already know what perverted shit anime be on. But they had to push each other off the barrier with their butts. Don't ask how I know that anime, my nigga. Like I said, I was scrolling through Crunchyroll. That's how I know the anime. But they dead got an anime like this shit, bro. Using their butts to push each other off. Oh, yeah, y'all heard my list of that bitch just swept. Yeah. Fuck.
Platform would be declared the winner, with the loser being left humiliated in the mud. Round
what
1
happened?
goes off without a hitch, resulting in the losing contestant being covered head to toe in a thick brown sludge, with the whole atmosphere perfectly encapsulating the craziness and high energy charm that you would expect from a Japanese game show made at the time. And so far, everything was all in good fun, with this excitement only escalating as the contestants convinced one of the show's hosts, a man named Tatsuchi Yanagita, to join in on the competition. It took some convincing, but eventually Tatsuchi agrees to compete, much to the enjoyment of everyone spectating. And from there, the comedy writes itself, as immediately after the round starts, it's apparent that he stood little to no chance. And upon instantly losing his balance, Tatsuki reacts in a split second and dives off the platform, landing headfirst into the muddy water below, which causes his body to fall limp.
Wait, does he die?
The water that he had just dove into was merely 6 inches deep, with the rest consisting of a thick layer of mud, which his head would strike directly, instantly causing his neck to break. And in that very moment,
What the? Yo.
Tatsuchi would be irreversibly paralyzed, leaving him unable to move from the neck down. It was a tragic accident. However, the accident itself is far from the most awful part of this live broadcast, with that coming immediately after. Unaware of Tatsuchi's severe injury, the crew believed that he was merely playing a prank on them and just joking around, and so they left him there, face first in the water, and proceeded to shove his face even deeper and deeper into the mud, splashing even more on top of his head to rub in the fact that he had lost. They had no idea that during their antics, Tatsuchi was in a desperate fight for survival, as in those 6 inches of water, he was slowly drowning, and completely unable to pick up his head to breathe. This lasts for an excruciatingly long 15 seconds, before they begin to bob his head up and down, and eventually pull Tatsuchi's face out of the water. But this reprieve was short-lived, as the contestants proceed to drop him back into the mud face first. It is so incredibly painful to watch, and made all the more disturbing with the over-the-top hysterical laughter coming from everyone around him, who are completely oblivious to the situation in front of them. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Tatsuchi is hoisted above the water, and the camera switched back to the main broadcast, ending both Tatsuchi's and the viewer's pain. By some stroke of good fortune, Tatsuchi would survive the ordeal, but just barely, as it's estimated that even just a few more seconds in that mud would have likely led to his death. But thankfully, this wasn't the case, and according to his Facebook page, Tatsuchi has learned to live with his body-wide paralysis, and even went on to rejoin the show years later in some capacity, ending this entry off on somewhat of a bright spot, despite this otherwise being one of the more unsettling and appalling broadcast accidents that I've ever seen.
That has any guilt, bro.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Donald Herbert had been in a coma for the previous...
On the topic of broadcasts that have left an impression on my life, I would say none have had more of an emotional impact than a story run by 60 Minutes about a man named Donald Herbert. The story starts back in 1995, just 4 days after Christmas, when a fire broke out in a home in Buffalo, New York. In an attempt to put out the blaze, firefighter Donald Herbert was standing on the roof of the building when suddenly it gave way. As a result, Herbert would fall into the attic where he would be trapped in the smoke, unable to breathe. He would lay there without oxygen for 6 whole minutes before they finally were able to pull his body to safety, with the whole ordeal being filmed and shown on local news. Somehow, Herbert managed to survive this accident, but being without air for that long caused him to lose most of his brain function, leading to him spending the following years in a minimally conscious state, unable to eat, unable to breathe, and seemingly unable to understand the world around him. Eventually, his condition led to him being placed in a
crazy. It could
nursing
all
home,
just go
where a
like
feeding
that,
tube
bro.
was the only thing keeping him alive. For all intents and purposes, the man was gone. But then, something happened. On April 20th, 2005, a staggering 9.5 years after his accident, Donald Herbert woke up.
What? Like, what do you mean he woke up?
In the nursing home where he had spent most of the years unresponsive, he would suddenly turn to a nurse and ask for his wife, Linda, while displaying signs of being fully lucid, which prompted the staff to immediately call his family, who rushed to see him. And sure enough, despite Herbert being completely blind, he was not only fully responsive, but recognized almost all of his family members. The moments following were all captured by cameras and later shown on an episode of 60 Minutes, with the footage being some of the hardest hitting and emotional that I've personally ever seen.
How long have I been gone?
Quite a while, pal. Quite a while. 10 years.
Damn, it was 10
The pain in
years?
discovering that he had been gone for 10 years, all that time
years,
missed,
bro.
robbed from a man who was just doing his
Waking up for 10 years could crush your soul, bro. 10 years, bro. 10 years, you just sleep, bro. That could crush your soul.
job is indescribably gut-wrenching, but it's
Damn,
what
bro.
happens after this footage that proves to be the most upsetting part.
Yo, let me try this setting on. Hold on, my bad, yo. Alright, that should be better. I think. Is it better? How does the mic sound? I just put a setting on mid-vid. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Wait, I gotta see how I sound though. Hello? Hello? Oh, I muted myself. Hello? Hello? Oh, I muted myself. Hello? Hello? Yo! Myself. Hello? Hello? Yo! Myself. Hello? Hello? Yo! Alright, it should be good. Yo! Hello? Hello? Yo!
Art. For nearly 16 hours, the newly awakened man spoke with his family, catching up on every little detail that he had missed. And though
Damn,
from that
bro.
point on he had moments going in and out of his lucidity, his long-term prognosis actually seemed hopeful. Throughout the next few weeks, Donald was surrounded by family members at all times, not only to take advantage of every single second that Herbert was awake, but also for his own safety as well, as since his awakening, he would thrash violently in his sleep, as if he still believed he was trapped in that blaze. And so to ensure his safety, at least one family member would be stationed with the man while he slept. Though on one night, one of the family members on duty had grown too exhausted to stay any longer, and from the first time since he became lucid, Donald Herbert was left alone. And during that night, he would again start to thrash violently, with Herbert flailing so hard that he would fall out of his bed and strike his head against the floor, causing his brain to start bleeding.
Oh no.
From that moment on, Donald Herbert would never become lucid again, and as a result of his injuries, he would pass away 1 year later from pneumonia.
Damn, bro.
If anyone had ever thought that such a horrendous thing could happen, obviously we would have stopped.
Yo, do
The
y'all
Twilight Zone.
y'all parents that grew up on Twilight Zone, did they used to glaze the show too? Or was it just mine?
Throughout its lengthy run, this television series provided some of the most entertaining and memorable moments in all of
Oh, snap, let me
television.
go full screen.
But for this section, I'm going to be cheating a little bit, as rather than looking at an event surrounding the show itself, I'll be highlighting the far less memorable movie version of the series. Simply named Twilight Zone the Movie, the film was broken up into multiple sections serving as sort of an anthology work with 3 separate storylines. And for the sake of this story, only one section and really only one scene bears discussion. The scene was intended to simulate a battle in the Vietnam War, in which the protagonist, a character played by actor Vic Morrow, is attempting to outrun an attack helicopter and escape the area. The footage was intended to serve as the section's dramatic conclusion, with it being described as the following. In the scene that served as the original ending, Bill, the character portrayed by Morrow, stumbles into a deserted Vietnamese village, where he finds 2 young Vietnamese children left behind when a US Army helicopter appears and begins shooting at them. Morrow was to take both children under his arm and escape out of the village as the hovering helicopter destroyed the village with multiple explosions. Based on that description alone, shooting the scene was going to be tricky and likely a very intense process on the set, as all the effects used were set to be done practically, meaning that they would require an actual helicopter and real pyrotechnics. Not only this, but the director, a man named John Landis, wanted to use actual child actors for the scene, which, given that it was planned to take place at night and near explosions, was technically illegal in the state of California. Despite the laws in place, however, Landis decided to shoot the scene regardless, enlisting 7-year-olds Mika Din Lee and 6-year-olds Renee Seannn Yi Chen to play the roles of the Vietnamese children. And with all the pieces now in place, the cameras began to roll on what was set to be the stunning conclusion to this particular section. As the scene starts, the spectacle of it all can't be understated, as the lighting, setting, and the pyrotechnics truly set a haunting tone. However, unbeknownst to the production team, there was a major problem developing. As stated prior, all the effects you see here are real, and during the scene there was an actual helicopter flying just above the actors, which by itself was already very dangerous, and made even more so due to the pyrotechnics. For the pilots, the explosions launched in the air created fireballs in the sky, making things much more difficult to navigate, but those on the ground were never made aware of this, and being pressed to make things look even more and more intense, the crew decided to double down on their explosions, launching 2 massive charges back to back, a decision that proved to be a costly one, as the second blast was so strong that it dislodged the helicopter's tail prop, causing the craft to spin uncontrollably. And within mere seconds, as the cameras roll on the 3 actors trudging their way through the water, the craft crashes directly on top of them. Somehow, everyone on board the helicopter survived the wreck, though those on the ground weren't so lucky.
Oh my gosh, yo. What the hell?
As in one split second, the blade of the helicopter slashed into Vic Morrow and Mika Din Lee, instantly decapitating them. And as the craft slammed to the ground, Renee Seannn Yi Chen would be crushed beneath its massive weight.
Damn,
in one frame, there were 3 living actors, and in the next, there were none. In retrospect, it's not hard to see the red flags and the dangerous practices being used by the production team. However, following several long legal battles, no one would be found liable in the deaths of the 3 actors, and Landis himself would go on to enjoy an incredibly successful career. The Twilight Zone film would eventually be released years later, only with a different ending.
Oh, they're not gonna demolish it. There's nobody'll come in here. I'll fight force with force.
Chapter 5.
Our final story takes us to the quaint countryside of Butsfield, England, where a man named Albert Dryden had been living a fairly solitary life. Following his retirement from steelworking, Albert dedicated his life to building up a plot of land which he had purchased in the area. His main goal was to construct a bungalow for his elderly mother where she could live during the summers, while also planning to build some sort of fallout bunker on the same plot. But right from the start, he ran into issues, as his permit request to build these structures on his land was promptly denied. This did not stop Dryden, however, as despite the ruling, he began his construction.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly who he is! Well, I don't know who he is, but I colored his picture before on... So I had digital arts, right? Digital arts, you know, digital arts. You do Photoshop and all that. And we had a task to recolor black and white pictures without knowing what their actual like color is. And I colored this nigga. I remember it so vividly, yo, but I don't have the thing no more because it was in my school ID and I didn't save anything from the Google Drive. So
anyway, believing he had found a workaround with the law, as rather than building the house in a standard manner, he instead dug a deep hole into the ground and began to construct his home there, labeling it as the home in a hole. Due to this, the home only stood about 8 feet or so above the ground, which Dryden believed made the construction legal. However, he was wrong in his assumption, and the building swiftly caused a disagreement between the man and the Derwentshire District Council, with this rift growing more and more amplified as time went on. In the midst of this ordeal, a man named Harry Collinson was appointed as chief of the council and assigned to handle the case as his first order of business, and he did so by initially—
Yo, off topic, I heard chief, and I had a random dream of me being back in RTC in high school. I just had to put that out there. What that's clear.
Tear down what he had already built. Dryden, however, decided to counter with a court appeal, which was swiftly denied, leading to the court's final order that the building be demolished within 3 months. It was around the same time that the local news began to document the ongoing feud between Dryden and the government, and despite the numerous rulings against him, Dryden still—
I don't think it's him that colored in digital arts. I was yapping. I didn't know there was a thing of him in color.
Refused to give in to the government's demands, and eventually, the council decided to take matters into their own hands, and decided to demolish the structure themselves. So on June 20th, 1991, Harry Collinson, a demolition team, and a group of police constables traveled to Dryden's property to demolish the structure. Before this group arrived, the decision was made that should Dryden attempt to escalate the situation, they were to immediately back off and come up with another plan to avoid any sort of physical altercation. At the scene, numerous reporters had already began gathering at the property line, including a cameraman for the BBC, who was there to document the feud in real time. And right from the start, it was clear that Dryden was not going to be going down without a fight. The gate to his property was chain-locked, with Dryden standing behind it, pointing to 2 letters that he believed proved that he should be able to keep his structure intact, at least for the time being.
Read that, that's an official letter, and there's an appeal in. There's an inspector coming out on this site in 5 weeks' time.
No, it doesn't say that. Where does it say
Well,
that?
I have another letter confirming that.
Can you show me the other
I'm
letter?
not going to show you the other letter, but this chap's coming out in 5 weeks' time. Well, all that I'm asking is to wait 5 weeks for the outcome, maybe 6 weeks. It'll take a week after he's been out.
Y'all mess with British accents.
That affects the legality.
Like, be honest, bro.
Notice that the inspector has confirmed.
Well, yes, Harry.
However, Dryden's request for more time was clearly falling on deaf ears, and realizing this, Dryden began to grow more and more agitated, with his tone quickly turning far more menacing.
If you don't open the gate, now we'll obviously have to take the fence down with the machine. So, if you want,
bro, just defending his property.
But
I wonder if this, because this is the darkest history moment, so there gotta be something deeper.
Any damage that's subsequently caused as a result of you preventing us doing that will be your liability.
Well, you might not be around to see the outcome of this disaster. Now, you've been warned.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I'm not going to explain, but if you had any sense, you would go away now and wait 5 weeks for the outcome of that.
Right? Fucking roost.
That's my last word on it.
If you show me the letter referring to the 5 weeks
I can't show you the letter. I've told you where the letter is.
At this point, based on their initial plan, the crew should have certainly turned back, as it was now getting to the point that Dryden was outright threatening Collinson, warning him that if he were to step on his property, that something awful was going to happen. And though this did cause Collinson to take a few steps back, he still remained steadfast in carrying out the task and remained on the edge of the property line,
this is like that one
standing his
Kicking It
ground
episode,
even when
bro.
Dryden escalates the situation even further.
What the Lord don't know? Go ahead, there.
Can you get a shot of this gun?
As the two stand face to face, Dryden brandishes his pistol and points it directly at Collinson. And wanted to ensure the man's combative behavior was being documented,
this is Australia,
Collinson
that's
asks
not
the
Europe.
cameraman to get a shot of his gun, which subsequently leads to this moment.
Can you get a shot of this gun?
Out of it.
In an
Oh,
instant,
yeah, he
with
just
cameras
pulled that bit.
rolling, Dryden fires a shot directly into the chest of Harry Collinson, and then fires another at the crowd standing before him, leading to things devolving into a chaotic scene of running and screaming.
As more shots were fired from a pistol, the camera crew and Look North reporter Tony Belmont ran for cover.
We were standing watching what was going on, and then a shot rang out. The chief planner fell to the ground, and I felt a shot in the arm, and I've clearly been shot here in the arm.
As the camera crew finally gets to a safe distance and catches their breath, it's revealed that one of the journalists for the BBC had been struck in the arm, along with one of the officers. Though in the midst of all this carnage, we see no sign of Harry Collinson, as by this point, he was likely still on the ground where he had originally fallen, dead from his gunshot wound, with his final words being,
"Can you get a shot of this gun? Out of it!"
Following the incident, police would engage in a standoff with Dryden, who claimed that he had set up booby traps and landmines, along with other explosives on the property, though this would turn out to be a bluff, and eventually he would be grabbed by officers and taken into custody, where he would subsequently be tried and sentenced to life in prison.
Damn.
And despite his actions on that day, Albert Dryden would go on to become somewhat of a national hero, growing a legitimate fan base for the way he stood up against the government. Dryden would live out his time in prison until 2017 when he suffered a massive stroke, to which he was let out on a compassionate release, with the man eventually passing away just 1 year later. Though his actions that day will forever be immortalized as one of the most notorious and darkest moments in television history. I want to give a big thank you to Scentbird.
No, you're not getting no thanks to Scentbird. W video though, darkest moments in TV history. Some of them were just shockers. Some of them, you feel me? I didn't even expect